All right, so fellow Ghanaians, a very good evening to all of you. And thank you very much for joining us on UPfront as the 28th day of January 2021. And today Parliament is debating. They're debating a motion by a Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Mama Yariga, on the need to have government support, private and public tertiary institutions in the payment of fees for freshmen and continuing students. That's just by way of what is happening in Parliament today. And of course, there's also been lots of conversation about Ghana's COVID-19 case count. But in case you were thinking about the fact that you could just walk into a public lab and have a COVID-19 test, well, the information is that unless you have been referred there by a hospital, you would have to make payments. But this evening, one of the issues that has been topical in the course of the day is the issue of Ghana's rating or Ghana's score when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index by Transparency International. So you do know that in 2019, Ghana's score was 41 out of 100. Now, in 2020, as you can see on my line graph, Ghana is improved from the 2019 score to 43. But that's not all. What we have done is to show you Ghana's performance over the past 8 years. And if you look at our performance over the past 8 years, we've done that because, in the past few years, there's been lots of conversation about corruption, and corruption has become a major issue in Ghana. Now, I'll be sharing some few details when it comes to corruption with you, but you realize that in 2013, Ghana scored 46 out of 100. We're not doing badly at all if you look at what we're scoring now. And then in 2014, the highest that we've had, 48. 2015, we started declining. We moved to 47 and then 43 in 2016. And 2016 is unique because in 2016, as a country, we went to the polls. And in going to the polls, one of the issues that, actually shaped our vote was the issue of corruption. Now, watch this critically. In 2016, at the time that we said corruption was a major problem in this country and hence a deciding factor in the country's election, it was 43 over 100. Then comes 2017 when a new government had taken over promising to fight corruption, 40. Well, it improved to 41 in 2018. And then we maintained the 41 in 2019. And just this morning, as Transparency International released their report, well, it says Ghana has performed better than we did in 2019. Now we are at 43. Now the 43 means that we're about 10th in Sub-Saharan Africa. It means that we're not doing well badly. As you can see, our ratings there in Sub-Saharan Africa, we rank 10th in Sub-Saharan Africa and 75 in the world. But one of the things you must also realize is that with this particular ranking, we're looking at, the assessment of the perception of corruption over the last 2 years or within the last 2 years. And what the team has done is that as we talk about the last 2 years, we've just picked 2 cases or perceptions of corruption. And the first would have to be with the contract for sale. Because here you had, a CEO engaged in what was, selling contracts. And as you can see, in 2019, investigative journalist Manasseh Azuri-Awene premiered his contract for sale documentary in which a company jointly owned by the PPA CEO, that's ABJ, and his relative were bidding for government contracts. Now that's Talent Discovery Limited. They were bidding for government contracts. And that was in 2019. And we brought this because we're looking at, the 2-year period that it actually happened. Now, following this, investigations were conducted. Now, Shraj, based on this finding, said there was evidence they established a pattern of movement of large volumes of cash. It's about 3.83 million through the respondents' bank accounts between March 2017 and August 2019, far in excess of his known income. Not only Shraj investigated this, because the Office of the Special Prosecutor also investigated this. And Mr. Martin Amidu's office found out that, there was more funds in there. Now, they say that it was actually in excess of about 15 million Ghana cedis. 15 million Ghana cedis between 2017 and 2019, another 3.83 million that Shraj stated. Following that investigation, of course, the president sacked Mr. Abiy. He terminated his appointment, and also, based on the recommendations of Shraj, he's been banned or he's been disqualified from holding public office for the next 5 years. But that would not be all. I'm sure many Ghanaians are aware of the much talked about, a Japa royalty deal. Now, the special prosecutor, let me give you the background to all of this, because the controversy over the Japa deal started on August 14, 2020, when the majority MPs secured the numbers to pass the agreement, although the minority staged a walkout. Now, the deal, which started in 2018 June, when Parliament passed the Minerals Income Investment Fund Act to manage the equity interest in mining companies and also receive royalties on behalf of the government of Ghana. And then what happened? Now, the special prosecutor found out that the involvement of Imara Capital made the deal an international business or economic transaction needing approval from Parliament. Now, Imara had its local partners as Databank, and as we would see shortly, the special prosecutor had issues with that. Now, he says the mandate agreement does not indicate when and how the fees quoted in US dollars will be paid by Imara to its decoy at the time, Databank. That became a very topical issue. And eventually, the SP added that the Finance Ministry eluded the approval of the Public Procurement Authority stated in the Public Procurement Authority Act. We now know that the President, after everything, ordered that it be taken back to Parliament. Well, eventually, there's been a change in the government won the elections again, but as we speak, that has not been taken to Parliament again. And there's been a talk about, the deadline. We're missing the deadline. But if you look at all these things, this evening, we're talking about the Corruption Perception Index and what it means for Ghana's fight against corruption. My name is Winston Amwa, and thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. When we return after this break, we'll be joined by the local partners of Transparency International. That's the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Now, the executive director will be joining us shortly, as you can see, and we're having this conversation, we're finding out the significance of this particular rating for Ghana. What does it even mean for our fight against corruption? Does it in any way show that we're doing well? If we're scoring 48 in 2014, and we've now reduced to 43 in 2020, should we be celebrating? Should we be happy that we have 43? Or maybe because we had 40, moved to 41, and we've moved to 43, is a departure of the reducing trend we saw after we scored 48 in 2014. You can join us on our social media handles on Twitter as JoyNews on TV. I'd love to know what you think about all the issues that we are discussing, because Ghana's for you and I, and it's only you and I that can make Ghana a better place. Stay with us when we return after these messages. We get into deliberations with Linda Ufori-Kwafu. Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on the JoyNews channel. This is Upfront, and I'm Winston Amwa, and tonight we're privileged to be joined by the Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Linda Ufori-Kwafu. Linda, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. I believe you're doing very well.
By God's grace.
Great, Linda. So tell us, how significant is, Ghana's score, particularly the increase in score from 41 to 43 in our fight against corruption? How significant is that?
Thank you very much. Obviously, it's a gain. So then the numbers have changed. But then if you look at the statement that we issued, we actually said since the period that the CPI became comparable from 2012, some countries have made significant progress. And those countries are the ones that have had changes between 3 percentage points upwards and not 1 or 2. So according to Transparency International, when you change, you make a progress by 1 point, you don't see that significant. 2 points, you don't see that significant. 3 points, 4 points, 5 points going upwards, then we can say that you are making a significant change so far as your performance is concerned. So obviously Ghana has gained 2 points, better than 2019, but that change is not recognized as so significantly by Transparency International.
So in effect, we can say that we haven't made progress when it comes to our fight against corruption, because that change is not significant per Transparency International's own assessment of significant changes that would constitute progress.
It will be erroneous to say so. We have made some progress. You have gained 2 points, but the 2 points that you have made is a marginal increase and not so significant, meaning you have a good footing for you to be able to go up if you want to. You have to bear in mind, I listened to the analysis before the interview started. You have to bear in mind that we actually came as low as 40.
Yes.
And now we have seen that we have gained some 3 points, all not gained within one period. We actually gained them in 2 different, 3 years actually. So meaning Ghana is making marginal increases. But according to TI, we say countries that are changing by 3 points, 4.5 points are making significant change. Also, you have to bear in mind, Winston, let me say something, that when you drop to 40, first you were at 48, then you came to 45. I don't have the data with me then. But
yes,
when you drop,
48 to 47.
Fast, when you were rising slowly. Okay.
Yes, so just by way of the data, we dropped from 48 to 47, and then we moved to 43, yes.
Yes, so between 47 and 43, you dropped by 3 points. But when you started rising again, you are rising at a very slower rate. And that is what TI says is not significant enough. So then if you want to be seen as part of the countries that are making significant changes, so far as CPI is concerned, you should be rising faster than you are doing currently.
But talking about rising faster than you're doing currently, and I've just been checking, Transparency International's website, and you would realize that if you look at countries that have been declining, the West declined since 2012, for instance. It's talked about countries that have lost, 7 points from the period. But if you look at us, for instance, since 2014 till now, we've dropped by 5 points. Certainly, that can be seen as retrogression, isn't it?
It can be seen as retrogression. So then somebody will say that the trend is a bit negative because you were up there, you dropped, you are rising slowly. So that can be seen as a rise, but still a negative trend. And so that's why I'm saying that what can we do if you want to really get to the stage? And I still don't even see 48 as the best score as a country like Ghana should be getting. We should be looking at going beyond the average that TI says, about 50% and above. And what stops us from getting there? So until we ever get to the 50 points, we can never pat ourselves on the back and think that we are doing so well.
We'll get to what we can do right and what we can do to ensure that we're able to, improve upon our performance. But before we do that, for instance, it's also important we get to appreciate what may have, caused us to increase our, our rankings or our ratings. If you look at, from 2019 to 2020, what are some of the things that we did right, resulting in Ghana's score increasing from 41 to 43?
Okay, so the difficulty with CPI and making a direct correlation between what might have caused the change is that CPI is a composite index. So we have about 13 different data sources being used. Each of the data sources, when they are interviewing respondents, ask a number of questions. Some of the surveys might be focusing on public financial management. Others will be focusing on the right to information, legislation, and how it's being implemented. Others will focus on so many other things that come together to form out of which the CPI's average is taken. So then you have to go back to data sources. In Ghana, we have 9 different data sources being used for us. You go back to these data sources to see which of them that a change might have happened. So then if under the World Bank survey that was conducted, there has been a change, then you go into those questions and see which of them will relate to any of the happenings within the country. So that's a very tedious exercise for you to do. Even that, you might not get it entirely correct, but then we can actually look at what are the things that have happened within the period that might be contributing to the changes, and what are the incidences that happened that in our perspective should have actually caused a reduction rather in our percentage and not necessarily gaining. So there are a number of things that could have contributed to that. It might be an issue of a law just being passed. It might be an issue of a law being implemented. And also when it comes to maybe why didn't we gain 5, but then we gain 3 or we gain 2, it could also mean that the happenings within 2019, 2020, issues concerning the Auditor General issues and how it was managed, the OSP issue and how it was managed, all these things might have actually even caused us not to gain so much. Okay. A reduction means that if you had a reduction, they would have easily attributed it to the fact that these happenings had caused the reduction. Now we got a gain. It means that these actions might have prevented us from gaining more. But so many factors could contribute, and we have to go back to data sources and then check it one by one.
So let's talk about some of the things which you think may have, caused us to have this gain. You've talked about it could be a legislation. What are some of the things that we did that, in your estimation, may have caused us to have this 2-point gain?
I think we passed the right to information legislation, right, during the period.
Yes.
And business experts are being interviewed about doing, for instance, doing business in Ghana, and how do you easily get information? How easy is it for you to do business? A question like this in Ghana. The person would then say that, oh yes, I know that they have now passed the right information law. In the past, it's very difficult to access information on procurement, access information on ABCD. There has not, clearly we don't have a full implementation of the law.
Exactly, we're still going through the process.
Inform somebody, yes. So then it can actually inform somebody to give us a better rating under one of the surveys that are being used in calculating the CPI. I remember last year or last 2 years, we actually went deep into the questions. And I think how we were managing Auditor General's work, some way, somehow, we were able to align that to our performance. So we gained 1, but we thought that the way and manner auditing was, because questions relating to public financial management issues came up. And that under that particular survey, we gained more. So if we then gained under that, then obviously issues under public financial management issues might have contributed to our gain. But then, as I said, for us to know where the 2 is coming from, we have to take the 9 data sources one by one, look at the questions that were asked, and try to strike a correlation between what might have changed during the period and maybe why we got. It's also possible we might have also scored lower on others. So those ones will bring us down and others would have taken us up. So we have to do further investigation to data sources to know. But then, as you rightly said from the beginning, anytime we talk about these data sources, people try to do some sort of politics with it. It is very important for us to know that the CPI is not a single survey that is being conducted. It's data sources within 2 years that is being used. So sometimes you have an overlap. In sometimes you actually get to know that all the 13 sources, about 8 of them would have happened during just the last year, and only a few or so would have happened in the last 2 years. Okay. So whatever it is, the result actually is what pertains to your country is what you get. So
now, based on happenings, particularly in the course of last year, personally, were you surprised at our score?
I was telling some group of people that if you asked me in an election year what is likely going to be Ghana's performance on the CPI, I will rate us down. Because so many things happen in an election year, so many allegations of corruption that's relating to vote buying, vote selling, and all those things. So then I would, if you asked me before an election, I wouldn't expect us to even have gotten a gain of 2. That is how come I feel that with all the happenings, you talked about the PPA issue, you talked about issues with the OSP, how the cases were managed, the issues were managed, talk about the Auditor General's issue, talk about Ijapa and all that. If you'd asked me before the CPI results were released today, I would have actually projected that we're going to perform lower than we did last year. So then now that we have gained by 2 points, it means that these, had it not been for these particular incidences that I've mentioned and all sort of allegations of corruption that took place in the previous year, it's possible Ghana would have gained more, maybe 4 more points. And then we would have fallen into the TI's category of significant changes so far as our CPI performance is concerned.
Well, another issue also could be the time this survey was conducted, or time this information was gathered. Maybe it was gathered at a time that, because you do know that the Ejapa deal, for instance, the special prosecutor's comments about it were released in November 2020. At that time, were we done with the collection of data? And so if we're done with the collection of data, maybe that may not have influenced, the particular ranking that we're having now.
Yes, at that time, so it's possible a Ejapa issue was so late in the year that its effects might happen on 2020's index. So it's possible. But then it's all very, very, very important for us to emphasize that it is not a single data source that we are looking at.
Mm-hmm. Now you've talked about the fact that these things, for you, may have affected us. And if you were to do the assessment based on all of these things, you would have expected that you probably would have said Ghana wouldn't even perform better. How have these, and let's look at our handling of these cases, for instance, starting off with the Ejapa, for instance, would you say that as a country we have handled it well in fighting corruption?
I must say that when it comes to the Ejapa deal, I like the collaboration amongst civil society organizations and how far we took this matter. I'm sure some people don't know that Ghana Integrity Initiative and other CSOs here in Ghana, together with Transparency International, even to this matter, to the ECOWAS courts. We even went as far as talking to the agencies in the UK and actually advising them that they shouldn't continue with this deal. And some way, somehow, by 31st December, the timelines that we're working with elapsed. So then they couldn't have continued. Because we also got to know that going back to Parliament was not the way to go. Even though that recommendation came up, we knew that once Parliament has dealt with the matter, it is not just a straightforward matter of going back to Parliament for what. So then we needed to take some actions in order to ensure that we don't get Ejapa going through by 31st December. And some way, somehow, it didn't go through. Now we have the opportunity to do all sort of the engagement that we need to do. So for me, I like the way and manner society took this issue up. Some said that we slept on our rights when we sat down for the law to be passed. And then later we came making all sort of noise. But then whatever it is, even though we slept on our rights during that time,
yes, would you agree
able to take
with
some
those
action that has prevented Ejapa from going forward.
Yes, but Linda, but would you agree with those who said, you joined the party quite late and you should have probably made inputs into the passage of the law itself? Would you agree with them?
Yes, I do. So sometimes Ghana Integrity Initiative, for instance, does not do direct work in relation to maybe oil and gas, natural resources, and all those things. So sometimes you might hear of these things and you expect other CSOs to have taken action. It's just when we realize that where we are going it's not too good for the country. That's when we mobilize ourselves and we are able to get some action. Whatever it is, no matter how delayed our action was, at the end of the day, Ejapa has not gone through. And then now there is the opportunity for more consultations, and even with the nature of parliament that the hand parliaments that we have now, it will quite be difficult for Ejapa to just sail through as it was going to do initially. So then, whatever, the results came late, but some way, somehow, we have a result that I think everybody is happy about, and then we have time now to deliberate further on Ejapa and how we should manage it for it to benefit the country as a whole.
Now, looking at, we'll get to a few issues concerning the OSP's office shortly, which you're board chairman, but let's also look at, still on the Ejapa issue. Do I get the impression that, Ghana's current constitution of parliament is one thing that excites you also, because you believe that the majority would not have their way, the majority group would not have their way, and thus lots of consultations would happen, and that also has the possibility of reducing corruption?
it is another area we should watch. We can't be so happy about that. It has a way of delaying so many things. I think the issue of consensus building and parliamentarians themselves understanding how they will do business is very important. But we should be careful in order not to use the current structure we have to delay government business. And that's where my worry is. Apart from that, you see, I was in the past, and I don't want to be a prophet of doom. There have been allegations of even people trying to bribe parliamentarians when we're going through vetting. That's a statement of fact. I'm not trying to conjure anything. And then we have a situation where we would need the other side to sort of vote in favor of the president's nominees for us to be able to move forward so far as the current arrangement is concerned. That's an area to watch. I am not saying that anything untoward would happen. But then if parliamentarians don't agree to work and then look at the nominees from a non-partisan basis, we are going to have the challenges we are anticipating, and then government business will not be as smooth as we expect it to be. It is good Ghanaians have given us a new way of how they want parliament to work. But then we should also be careful that we shouldn't be overly excited. I initially was that, yeah, it's going to be very difficult for the majority to always have their way, and things will be now, we will get the parliament playing the role of an oversight responsibility as the Constitution has actually arranged it to be. So now that's, I'm also becoming a bit worried that if care is not taken, I'm worried about government business being delayed, and I'm also worried about possibility of collusion, and then we losing so much resources when it comes to bribery allegations and all those things.
Talking about collusion, now the bribery allegation at the time against the former Minister of Energy, Boakye Jackson, was investigated by Parliament, and it was found out not to be true. Doesn't that, give you the confidence that you can trust Parliament to actually do things together? Or has they done anything so far that it tells you that if care is not taken, there might be some collusion? Because that particular issue was found not to be true, unless maybe you didn't trust the investigations that was conducted by Parliament itself.
No, we actually trust the honorable parliamentarians to do the right things all the time. Obviously, that's like we refer to them as honorable members of Parliament. So we have confidence in Parliament, and I believe in institutions. For me, any day, anytime, I believe we have the right institutions to work. But then we are talking about human interactions, and anything is possible when these things do happen. We were not happy at the time when Parliament did its own investigations of allegations of bribery within them. They have the structures to do, but then we're believing that the investigation should have been done by another organization, such as Strike. It doesn't mean that we don't believe the outcome of the investigation that were conducted. But then, is it going to be that anytime there's an allegation of bribery and corruption within Parliament, it will be the same Parliament investigating it and giving us a clean verdict all the time? No. I think that in as much as Parliament really enjoys their oversight responsibility given to them by the Constitution, and anytime they want to exercise it on the executive, as we can clearly see now, they should also be willing to allow other institutions mandated by law to do these kind of investigations for them when they do come up. And then Ghanaians who actually would be more confident of the outcome of the. I at the time raised an issue about Parliament conducting its own investigation in this particular matter. Okay. But then we are hoping that when it does happen again, we should go look outside and not allow. And
so your fear when Parliament did its own investigation was the fact that Parliament wouldn't want to come to any conclusion that would give a bad impression about the House. And so, if you are to investigate yourself when you're accused of wrongdoing, there's the possibility that you would exonerate yourself, right?
Wait, thing. I would prefer another organization investigates Parliament. I wouldn't respond to your question directly. I know the implications of these things.
No, I mean, I was just saying that. I mean, I was just finding out that. I mean, if you were to investigate yourself, there's a lot of possibility that you would.
Obviously, I wouldn't want to investigate myself in such a matter. So then it's always giving another organization with the mandates under a law, the laws of Ghana, to do this kind of investigations for us when they do come up. But I'm believing and hoping that Parliament itself will learn how to work together effectively so we get the result that we are looking for. We have nominees coming before a house and a committee that is divided this way. So then we are expecting, we are all watching to see how they will beautifully how do you call it? Go through the vetting, and then we get the result that we are looking for.
We will get to some of the things that we have to do right in ensuring that we're able to win our war against corruption. But even before we get to do that, it's also important we situate the conversation in context as we're talking about our fight against corruption. So, for instance, let's look at the decision to order the Auditor General to go on leave. Now, perception-wise, how did that influence corruption perception in Ghana?
I am sure we've taken this matter to court as a civil society organization, including the Ghana Integrity Initiative. So we are in the Supreme Court at the moment, but then our case is yet to be heard, and I wouldn't want to make any comments about that. But it's possible.
Yes,
it might have.
But yes, we're not looking at the details of the case. We're talking about, you're looking at the processes and all of that, but we are looking at the fact that if you have an Auditor General who's been known to be an anti-corruption crusader, surcharging institutions and disallowing expenditure, and that person is asked to proceed on leave, particularly because we're dealing with corruption in the public sector, what kind of perception is sent out when the government asks such a person to proceed on leave until the end of a crucial election?
It's possible it will actually give a wrong perception. So if I am a respondent under any of the CPI surveys, obviously my rating will be low. So then I'm using myself as an example. If I was actually surveyed in any of these indices, obviously I would have rated the government low, because this is a person that we believed was committed. One of the few leaders that we had in the country that has shown commitment, and even the international community were very much aware of the work that he was doing. I have been to international conferences with him, and I can attest to the fact that people actually come looking at our Auditor General then. And so, because they've heard about him, they've listened to him, we were on an international conference together and have stories to share about him. So that's how come I would then have rated or any question asked me during that time low for the country and the two. But then we didn't get it the way we wanted. So we've gone to court and we are hoping to see what the
Now, while you're going to court and we're waiting for the Supreme Court to do so, what did that singular action tell you about the government's commitment to the fight against corruption?
I wouldn't be able to use singular actions to judge a government's action against the fight, so far as the fight against corruption is concerned. I had opportunity to have conversation, actually also on your network, and even I remember then there was the Minister for Information also, and said that once we are disagreeing on these matters, then we should actually allow the court to take a decision.
Yes, but, but while we are disagreeing, but while you're waiting for the court to take a decision, what I'm trying to find out from you is that when you have a government that is committed to fighting corruption, when you have a government, and in a country that we say we want to fight corruption, now when the office of the president, let me put it that way, directs one of the key persons leading the charge against corruption to proceed on leave, what does that tell you about the commitment of that particular government in a fight against corruption?
We have a position, and I have a position on this matter. That position has been disagreed. The government has actually disagreed with our position on that particular matter. Now we've taken it to the appropriate institution for them to take a decision, actually to settle this matter for us. I wouldn't want to continuously project my stand. But then obviously, as I said, I will not use a singular action to condemn or to say the government is not committed to the fight against corruption, because there have been other areas that they might have done well. This particular action, government's position, I still stand by the fact that I disagree with government's action.
And that particular position for you didn't show much commitment in fighting corruption, because such a person whom the whole world wants to see all the time when you go to conferences because of the belief that he was helping, nip it in the bud, for you may show, for instance, that government wasn't committed, hence your disagreement. Okay, let's get to another issue. And in this case, that's the final one before we get into how we can deal with corruption and all of that. But it has to do with your, a place that you're very familiar with, the Office of the Special Prosecutor. You are, chairperson of the board. Now, what
government has dissolved all boards, statutory boards.
I know.
So obviously,
yes, you were chairperson. But let me find out from you, when the special prosecutor resigned, how did that, in your perspective, affect our perception of corruption and our fight against corruption in this country?
I was not very happy, or I must say, I didn't anticipate the resignation. I didn't see it coming. Because when it comes to the Office of Special Prosecutor, the personality we need to manage that office or be the SP is the SP we had. We need somebody who has the guts. We need somebody who knows what it's about. We need somebody who is committed. I always say that there are some kind of persons that we need. If you get about 10 of them, we will be smiling so far as our effort in fighting corruption is concerned. And I actually saw Honorable Amidu as one of them. So then we needed somebody experienced, somebody knowledgeable about the subject matter we're dealing with, committed to the fight against corruption himself to lead that particular office. So then I was very disappointed to see that he was not going to be with us again. But that's a personal decision. And there are so many things that might have informed his decision. Some he shared with the general public. And so we actually have to give him benefits of doubt that he did the right thing and he didn't want to continue. But I was very disappointed. For me, the fact that he went away and the explanations that he gave and the counter responses from government then makes everybody a bit confused as to exactly what was happening. But from where I sit, I believe Honorable Martin Amidu was the right man for the job, and he has the guts to do it.
And from where you sit, have you spoken to him ever since he resigned?
Winston?
Yes, Linda. Have you heard from? I'm just asking, and that would influence my next question that I'm about to ask you.
I wouldn't want to share that in public.
You wouldn't want to share that in public?
I wouldn't, yeah.
Okay, as to whether you've spoken to him or not, that's something that you wouldn't want to share. But since you've talked about he being the best person for the job, do I get the impression?
What I said was that we needed somebody with a kind of guts.
And so he was the right person. He was the right person for the job.
Yes, that's
so
the kind of person.
he was the right person for the job. So then I get the impression that you were unhappy with some of the issues that he raised. Were there issues that you knew as the chairperson of the board? Some of the issues that he raised, were there things that you knew?
Obviously, some of the things that he raised, and I've responded to this question in the past. So then we talked about the challenges that the office had gone through. We talked about accommodation and so many things that had happened, and I wouldn't say I didn't know about them. Other matters relating to Ejapa were new, and the board had not met them to discuss them. So then those ones came to the public domain, and we all got to know. But the matters in relation to accommodation, to officers, to recruitment, those teething challenges, I wouldn't say I don't know about them. That would be a lie.
I'll get back to you, so we'll look at how we can improve, fight against corruption on the final lap of the program. But we go for some few messages. This is Upfront on the JoyNews channel. I am Winston Amwa, and tonight our guest is Lindo Forikwafu, who is the Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. We're talking about the Corruption Perception Index, the ratings that it's had for Ghana, and what that means for our fight against corruption. We'll be right back. Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. And tonight our focus is on the Corruption Perception Index, rating Ghana 43 out of 100. That's an improvement of 2 points from the 2019 figure of 41. But of course, what does that mean for our fight against corruption? Well, Lendo Forikwafu, who's the executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, says, well, maybe if we didn't have one of the two cases that we had in the final quarter of the year, maybe we would have done better. This is an improvement, but not a significant one. And so let's get back to Linda. And in the final lap of the program, we want to find out the things that we need to do in ensuring that we are able to deal with corruption and, as a result, win the fight against corruption. So, Linda, what are some of the improvements that we must have, and in what areas to ensure that we are able to win this war once and for all?
When you look at our statements, you realize that Transparency International tries to strike a relationship between corruption and emergency responses. And actually also said that countries that have performed very well in the 2020 CPI are countries that have been able to commit so much resources to healthcare and also have been able to manage those resources very well. And the reason why TI did that is that we don't see COVID-19 only as a health issue, but we see it also as a corruption issue. So then countries that are mismanaging health resources are performing badly in even the management of COVID-19 and also performing on the CPI as well. So then our recommendations in dealing with corruption during this period, and especially when we don't know when this pandemic is leaving the world or when this pandemic is actually, we are not going to see it anymore, we have to make recommendations tailored along that line. And first and foremost, in your earlier submissions, you actually said that had it not been the issue of procurement and all that happened in 2020, I actually alluded to the fact that we might have performed better. So then we tried to make recommendations and asking government to ensure that we enforce our public procurement rules so far as all contracts are concerned. We know that under COVID-19 or in pandemic situations, we do a lot of procurement, procuring goods, services, food, sanitizers, face masks, and all those things. We should be able to stay within the laws and the rules that we have set for ourselves so far as procurement is concerned and not keep on abusing single procurements. Single source procurement, as we have been doing in the past, and also to ensure some more availability of relevant data. Part of the people that actually work towards advocating for the passage of the right to information legislation. We have the law. In 2021, we should be talking about the full implementation of the acts, setting or putting in place all the structures that we need to get the acts implemented to the full. Then we also mentioned speeding up digitization of the economy, and that is very, very important. This is an exercise that we know the Vice President actually started with some institutions like the GRA and the rest in the years past, but then we need to do so we'll be able to ensure so much transparency and accountability and prevent what we call artificial opacity as far as the country is concerned. And then demanding that we should continue to allow or promote civic space and not try to sideline the NGOs, for instance. And I say so because during COVID-19 management, NGOs to a very large extent were sidelined. But for the fact that we're able to organize ourselves under the Star Ghana arrangement, we wouldn't have been able to make any impact at all. And also not to limit the civic space, civic rights of people, and allow people to be able to engage with the stakeholders, with governments and the institutions mandated by state to perform functions in relation to COVID-19 management and in governance as in general, so that we'll be able to hold that.
Now, I am interested in the health expenditure bit and the fact that countries that had increased expenditure in health and all of that, performed better. I want to understand the basis of that, for instance, even in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. What's the basis of that particular conclusion that you reach?
Okay, so then what is happening is TI is of the opinion that any country that is able to assign the right kind of resources to any sector, so like the health sector, and it's also able to manage those sectors well, or manage those resources well, are countries that already know how to manage resources. So then Ghana, if we commit, so countries that committed, for instance, about 5% and above of their GDP to COVID-19, 80% of those countries always score better on the CPI when we started comparing from 2012. The countries that we say that they have significantly performed, so far as the CPI is concerned, talk about countries like Greece, Ecuador, Myanmar, Guyana, South Korea. These are countries that commit so much resources to healthcare. In the midst of COVID-19, they've been able to also manage the pandemic very well. Countries that are committing less resources to important sectors, like we have been within 2018, World Bank says that Ghana committed about 3.9 of our GDP to healthcare management or whatever. When we do those things, we already don't show commitment to very important sectors, and we equally do not also manage some of these resources very well. You have to bear in mind that during this COVID period, there have been so many allegations of corruption, not only within Ghana. I was having conversations with other people, and I always say that it's an African problem. It's the whole world's problem, but then Africa is suffering most when it comes to the management of public resources and also COVID-19 resources in general. So then if you are able to manage your resources or finances very well, generally during this COVID, you will not be seen to be struggling, and your healthcare systems will not be struggling as well.
So, Linda, finally, we know that in 2016, during the general elections, one of the key areas that the elections were fought was the area of corruption. Now, if you look at the ratings from 2013 to 2016, on the average 45, and from 2017 to 2020, on the average 41, would you say that as a country, efforts that were put in place in fighting corruption, over the last 8 years have been better than the efforts over the last 4 years?
The CPI, our performance on the CPI does not show same. So that we can't say that we have put in more efforts, or we have put in some efforts, but the efforts have not yielded the results. That's like I'm in the office, I think yesterday or so, we tried to draw a graph, and we felt that the change is happening, but it's a negative change, a negative trend. So what we are saying is that Ghana continues to make efforts, and especially what efforts are we making in the area of passing legislation? So we pass all the transparency enhancing legislation. Then when it comes to
Linda,
implementation
the outcomes are the ones that are measured. Yes, you may pass the effort, but what really matters.
So what I'm trying to say is that,
and so based on the outcome.
So Winston, what effort are you talking about? I'm talking about, if I look back, passing laws. But I'm saying that the laws themselves do not fight the corruption.
Okay.
The laws need activation. So then if I pass a right to information law, if I pass an OSP law, and somebody being savage says that, oh yes, they have passed the laws, but then we don't go a step further to ensure the enforcement and implementation of the law, then obviously we will not get a result. We get the kind of results that we are getting. So what it means is that our efforts might be at the level of lawmaking, law passage, providing resources, but then the ones that will bring about the change will be the sanctioning and actually getting the stolen money back for us, actually sending people to prison, serving as a deterrent to other people. Those ones we are lagging behind. And that is the kind of change we need in order to get a significant change that TI is expecting us to get. And so for me, I believe we are putting some efforts, but until we go past the 48% AG and then get to 50, 55, I would say that our efforts are not enough. And I always want to mention that the CPI is for business executives, but then the opinions of ordinary Ghanaians, as captured in the NCCE Arab End Line program, also says that we are making progress, but the progress is too marginal. Okay. And that is something we should be moving away from in the year 2021.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda Ofori-Kwafo, for joining us. We're very grateful you made time to speak to us this evening on UPfront on the JoyNews channel. My name is Winston Amwa. On behalf of the team, thank you so much for being part of us all. So we'll come your way again on Wednesday next week at 6 p.m. Up next is JoyNews Prime. Keep watching the JoyNews channel. Have a good evening.